Hello, everyone. Welcome again to Center Court. We're talking about the MBA in your career, and we have three alums from three great MBA programs at three great schools to chat about their professional journeys and how the MBA fit into that and what the MBA actually did for them. Let me introduce each and every one of them. From Carnegie Mellon Tepper School of Business, we have Catherine Hittelbaugh. Is that how I pronounce that? Hittelbaugh?
Heidelbaugh. It's a tough one. Don't worry about it.
Heidelbaugh.
Yeah.
Heidelbaugh. And Catherine has a really interesting job. She's a senior field merchant at Lowe's. She actually joined Lowe's as an internship during her MBA in supply chain management and has had a couple of promotions to that role. And then from Emory University's Goizueta School of Business, we have Eleanor Gutierrez, who, hi there, is a director at EY Parthenon, the consulting firm, which we all know, and she graduated from Emory in 2020, incidentally. Catherine graduated in 2018. So it's good. We have a few years of perspective where the MBA is behind you, but you've been able to really think about what it contributed to your life. And then we have, I'm going to screw this up, I know it. Is it Mika or Musar?
It's Micah and
Micah.
no worries. And the nickname is Musa.
Musa. Okay, Musa.
Yeah.
Pellerin. Musa Pellerin, who's from Indiana University's Kelley School of Business. And he is at, of all places, Microsoft. Although right after school, you graduated in 2019, you went to 3M, a great company, and you're a senior business development manager at Microsoft, which is a really cool job, I imagine having. Well, welcome all of you. So I want to start with, maybe you can give us a little capsule synopsis of your professional journey and how, in fact, it led to an MBA. And then we'll talk about your post-MBA career a little bit later. But what were the deciding factors that led you to get the MBA in the first place? Catherine, let's start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for having me. So I studied mechanical engineering from a really small undergrad called Rose-Hulman. It's in Indiana, so very, very specialized. I always knew growing up I wanted to be an engineer, but I quickly, when I got into the working world, I realized, if I wanted to be a leader someday, I really needed those business fundamentals. So for me, I worked a couple years, saved up some money, and looked for, a highly analytical program where I could get a lot of great business fundamentals and great networking. And that's what led me to Tepper.
Oh, great. Makes sense. Mika, how about you?
So a little bit about myself. When I was an undergrad, I was 5'8", 150 pounds entering my freshman year. And that wouldn't seem like it makes a lot of sense for me to disclose, but I'll make it make sense really soon. I actually entered college on a football scholarship. So I went to Hampton University, HBCU in Virginia. And then within 18 months, I went from 5'8", 150 to kind of like where I am now, like 6'1", 200 pounds. So with that, I got super lucky. I played in the NFL for 4 years. Had a great time. Yep. Don't want anybody to get intimidated though on this call because I probably only have one more career tackle than everyone on this panel. Assuming you all didn't play in the NFL. But post NFL, I had already started a couple businesses. My dad, in his infinite wisdom as a lawyer CPA, said, "You know what, Musa? I think it'd probably be smart if you came off this like eat, pray, love thing you're doing right now after playing ball and elevated your understanding of business." So that's exactly what I did. The NFL had a program with IU, also leveraged the consortium, did a lot of diligence, and was looking for a program that would give me the opportunity to evaluate all my options. So that's how I ended up at Kelley.
Wow. How many years were you in the NFL?
4.
4 years. Wow. Did you get banged up?
A couple scrapes and bruises, nothing crazy. Fortunately, I left on my own terms. Nothing,
Yeah,
nothing
no,
crazy.
you look good. You're not scarred. You look like
No,
you're in good health.
thankfully. Appreciate it.
Exactly. Eleanor, how about you? What tell us about your professional journey and how it led to your MBA at Emory?
Well, it's going to be hard to follow that story, but I'll try my best. So I graduated from a small liberal arts school called the University of South in Tennessee. And after that, I wasn't really sure what exactly I wanted to do, but I ended up getting a job at the CoStar Group, which is a commercial real estate data firm. They own apartments.com. So if you see like Brad Bellflower, that's our famous guy, Jeff Goldblum. He's on a lot of the commercials that they've done. But I worked there for 5 years. I did data analytics and consulting, so it was a little bit of a hybrid role. And as I started doing more consulting, I realized I just loved the client facing aspect of that job. Being able to help clients solve complex problems. And so I wanted to pivot into consulting full time. And after doing a lot of like coffee chats and networking with a lot of people, I decided the best way to pivot into consulting would be to get an MBA. So my husband actually had already done the 1-year MBA program at Emory. So he was like our trial run for the family, and he had a really good experience and got a really good job. And so I decided to do it right after him. And so went into consulting, didn't have an internship because it's a 1-year program, but got exactly what I wanted out of the program. So it was overall a really good experience, and started in consulting and love it still.
Oh, so even out of the 1-year program, you were able to make that transition into an entirely new career.
Absolutely. Yeah, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And I just had to probably spend some extra time in a shorter time frame, casing and networking. But yeah, I was able to get a couple offers. So it worked out really well.
Yeah. A lot of people, obviously go and get an MBA, but they may not be absolutely certain that they want to do one specific role like you. I wonder if Catherine or Musa had a career path in mind when they actually entered the program, or if it came out of an exploration while they were at their schools. Catherine, what was it like for you?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to chime in. So I've always been like the engineering mindset problem solver. I've always loved fixing things. I was always known as like the fixer. So naturally, I thought supply chain and operations management, right? And then when I got to B school, everyone was like, "Hey, what about consulting? What about banking? What about this? What about that?" And it can be really overwhelming, but to be honest, I spent a lot of time exploring a lot of different avenues, talking to a lot of alumni, just making sure that I really understood what that career looked like, what that work-life balance looked like, because I was very interested in kind of just the whole picture. But I knew you could always go do an internship and change your mind. And that's kind of what I did. Is I didn't really know what supply chain was like. And I knew I would love operations. I knew I'd love consulting. So I ended up doing a supply chain internship with Lowe's, actually, which was great because that really cemented the fact that I not only liked that industry of retail, it's very fun and fast paced, but I also really enjoyed the work and the responsibility of the overall operations of buying product. So
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it was good exploring everything because I really wasn't sure, but I ended up kind of going down the path that I thought it was originally.
Right. And Musa, did you know you wanted to do 3M and Microsoft, or did that just happen for you? Maybe you even wanted to go into sports management. I don't know.
Right. No, I think honestly, so much of it was net new for me, right? Seeing as how my professional career thus far involved a helmet. So because I didn't know, like we would say down south, poop from sugar, I think for me it was more so a function of understanding what it is that I want to say no to, right?
Yeah.
And kind of maintaining that sort of optionality. So one of the good things about Kelly is as I was exploring different internships, I wanted to recognize, all right, what opportunity exists that allows me or affords me at least the opportunity to continue to explore different facets of what I'd be interested in, whether it be from an occupational perspective or a functional perspective or an industry perspective. So that's why I elected to go to 3M, because it gave me the opportunity to work across healthcare, transportation, electronics, right? I see we have Catherine on the line, obviously. So a lot of supply chain, logistics type of work, but also help me understand not only those industries within themselves, but understand from a functional perspective, what does it look like to do marketing in healthcare versus in supply chain? What does it look like, to do accounting, budgeting, strategy? So that's what helped me kind of make my decision, is preserving the optionality and look for internships that afforded me that opportunity.
Yeah, that's great. Musa, what was the learning experience like? I mean, was it similar to your undergraduate experience or completely different?
Yeah, not even close, right? So I think everyone on this call can attest to some version of a core experience. So for those who aren't familiar, you basically take a number of different classes for a semester, and without question, it was the hardest thing I've ever done academically. We joke around in football. We say when we're about to play another team that we've locked the gates, right? So everybody's locked into the field. And in the same way, when you start your MBA, or at least at Kelley, they kind of put you through the academic gauntlet. And I think for me, having the experience and exposure to, once again, all these different course subjects really helped me understand more and more about the business world and kind of accelerate that learning curve in a way that I probably wouldn't have otherwise been able to, given the quality of the teaching, the setup of the core itself, and my peers. So yeah, that's kind of how I jumped into it. I imagine like everybody else.
Yes. And you, unlike many people, had an integrated core with only one grade. Am I right?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, I don't know about that. That would scare me, you know. Now, Eleanor, what was your learning experience like at Goizueta?
Yeah, so I guess I had a unique experience as I did the 1-year MBA. So
Right.
for people who don't understand how the program's set up, it starts in May and ends in May. So they take a 2-year program and put it into 1 year. So the first year was in a summer. So it was extremely intense. All of those core classes were scrunched into a few weeks at a time. And so the summer was a pretty tough experience. But one thing that I really loved about the Emory MBA program is that it's really small. And so with the 1-year MBA program, it was only 50 students. So we were, staying up until midnight, sometimes past that, but we were able to, bond over, late night discussions and stuff. So overall, like I was able to learn a lot, but I didn't have a business. I mean, I did consult or a little bit of consulting, but I didn't have those core business, classes in undergrad. So like accounting, finance, economics, these were all like new courses for me. So a pretty steep learning curve, but I think Emory does a really good job. And I think consulting or business schools in general do a good job getting a well-rounded class. So you have people that have those backgrounds that can help you along the way. And so overall, I learned a ton in a really short period of time, but a really good experience. I'm glad I did it.
Also, having your husband go through first as a guinea pig in a way probably helped, right? I mean, he could relate to what you were going through, and he could probably, when you ever hit a challenge, I imagine he could offer some kind of support, right?
Yeah, absolutely. He's like, oh yeah, like I remember this, or oh no, I tried to, keep that out of my mind. But yeah, absolutely. Definitely a lot of emotional support as well.
Yeah. And Catherine, so you're an engineer, you go to Carnegie Mellon, that's a place for engineers. And Tepper School of Business accepts everybody, of course. So it's a much more diverse class. But nonetheless, you had to find your tribe at Tepper. What was the learning experience like?
Yeah, so I had a lot of peers who were engineers too, and we all exchanged horror stories, if you want to call it that, just how rigorous and challenging engineering school is. But something that a lot of us had in common was those of us who went to like very focused tech schools didn't have all these business classes, right? So I had never taken an accounting class. I had taken like intro to econ maybe in high school, right? So a lot of us actually got together early, especially in the late summer, and started talking about like what tools and resources are they using just to get up to speed on the basics, right? So I did a lot of different kind of like courses and like the dummies for accounting for dummies, that kind of a thing, just so that I could at least understand the basics. But I really liked the analytical side of Tepper. It's known as one of the most analytical programs, and that's why I wanted to go to it, because business is all data driven now, right?
Yes.
So I really loved that part. That was my favorite. And kind of like Eleanor was saying, such a diverse group of people at the school. So I was able to help my peers out with a lot of the analytical side, and a lot of my business friends and econ friends were able to help me with that stuff. So overall, it was a great experience.
I wonder what most surprised you, Catherine. Was there something as soon as you entered the program or soon after that you said, wow, I didn't really think about this, or I thought this, but it's been completely disproven?
Honestly, I think one of the coolest things is very similar to Musa's experiences. I had friends and colleagues in the program that had incredibly diverse backgrounds. One of my favorite examples is I had a friend, and she came from like a symphony orchestra. And I would have never thought, hey, this is going to be someone sitting next to me in class every day. But lo and behold, I mean, the diversity of the class, they talk about it, you read about it, but until you're sitting there in a room, let's say like conference style, right, where everyone's looking down on the teacher and you're having those engaging in class conversations about what was your career like, what was a real situation like. It's absolutely fascinating to hear some of the stuff that they've gone through in their careers, because it is a career, right? So there was a lot to be learned from them. And, honestly, I think I had read a lot about it, but until you experience it, it's pretty wild. So I think that's one of the best things about B school that I really appreciated, was just the diversity of thought.
Yeah. I imagine that many people thought it was kind of cool to have an NFL player in their class, Musa. What was that like for you? I mean, were you the instant celebrity?
By no means. Yeah, I think borrowing on Catherine's point, the diversity of thought
Yeah.
that you find in business school is extremely unique, right? So there are individuals who've started multi-million-dollar companies who are coming back to school. So a lot of the overperformers that you would imagine are there, right? Fair enough. And we're all part of that group to some extent, in some capacity. And I think being able to leverage not just the domestic experience, but the international experience. So individuals who have been successful in the business in Japan, in India, right? Like literally one of my best friends is literally helping helping modernize the grid in Eastern Africa right now. The sort of experiences that they have help you look at problems from a different vantage point, right? So a lot of people like to talk about everybody's touching a different piece of the elephant. When you're able to get into a lot of these diverse classrooms, what you come away with is more perspective, and that perspective allows you to make more informed decisions as a business leader, or just as an individual in general. I think everyone's richer for it.
Yeah, true. Eleanor, I wonder if you could describe what the student culture was like at Goizueta, and maybe even offer a few adjectives to describe your classmates.
Yeah, so the culture at Emory was great. I mentioned this before, but Emory is just like a smaller program. And so they had weekly events. And so I just felt like it was like a pretty like close-knit group, right? I mean, we got to know each other. They had a weekly event called Kegs, which is basically bringing everyone together and socializing. And so that was a really good opportunity to meet people.
I've been
They
a
also
keg. I've drunk from one of those kegs.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I wasn't sure if everyone knew what that was, but yep. But it's a really good time to network and get to know your classmates outside of the classroom. And so I'd say overall, just a really strong, like tight-knit culture, right? We're all, smart people. We're all really eager and driven. And so just a really good culture. In terms of for adjectives, I'd say, just really driven, smart, and fun people. I think Emory does a really good job just defining like a good, collective group of people that have a lot of good qualities across the board.
Catherine, how would you describe the culture at Tepper?
Honestly, Eleanor named it. We also had our own beers version on Fridays called beers. But just to add, because I agree with everything she was saying, one of my favorite things about Tepper was how family oriented they were. I would say half of my classmates, were all in their 30s, early 40s, let's say. A lot of them had families, right? And kids. So at beers and at these events, their families were just as much a part of the program as we were as students. And that meant the world to people, right? I had a friend who was pregnant during this school year, and it's amazing, what people can do to come together and be there to support each other. So family oriented is definitely something that I wanted to add to that list too.
Yeah, that's great. Musa, you want to comment on your culture there at Kelley?
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is humility, right? So I think everyone can agree that if you go to top 20 school or just business school in general, right, there's a certain level of confidence, there's a certain level of self-assuredness that's associated with that. And I think sometimes that gets when those people are communicating with other people, we see it get lost, and it comes across maybe sometimes it's like arrogant, something to this effect. So I think the first thing when I think of Kelley, and mainly one of the reasons I chose Kelley, is just the uncomfortable amount of humility that people shared, right? And that you have people who have done so many incredible things, as I mentioned. And if I ever had a question, they say, "Oh, Moose, it's just this." And you know what I mean? You get to learn more about their story, and they've done amazing things. You would think that these individuals would have some sort of, inflated view of themselves, but it's not the case. So I think humility is number one, and I think once again, like everyone else on this call, community oriented. We had a social group, excuse me, and I mean every week without fail, we had some sort of event. Maybe kegs were involved, maybe not. And I think in that sort of networking or bonding, that's what I'll call it. I feel like we were able to really grow as a group, and to this day, I think a lot of us are still really close.
Yeah. Now I know, Kelly, there's something called Me Inc.
Mhm.
And it's essentially made to help support and prepare you for both an internship and your ultimate career. Can you
Right.
talk a little bit about that and how that sets you up for the jobs at 3M and Microsoft?
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's married to what I was speaking to earlier about learning what you want to say no to. I think there's a lot of pressure when you're entering an MBA, particularly a full-time MBA, right? So I spent 18 months of my life in Bloomington, Indiana, best college town in the country. But before that, you think to yourself, what's the opportunity cost of me being here, right? And there's a pressure associated with that opportunity cost because I could be doing this, and if I were doing this, and you start to extrapolate like, oh, well, the compounding effect of me doing XYZ instead of going to business school is this. And a lot of times what happens is people get into, their careers and they say, well, I don't know what I want to do coming out of the MBA, so I'm going to do consulting. That wasn't a shot at you, Illinois. That's just it's just like a 101. People say they want to get into consulting. And what Me Inc. does a good job of is basically saying like, okay, to the Lincoln term, right? Measure twice, cut once, right? Like spend your time investing in understanding who you are, right? Because you don't get any points for going to consulting and switching a year later, right? So it's better to take the time to understand who you are, how you work within a team environment, what things that might fit your exploratory self, because this is the opportunity to do that, and Kelly has the resources to do that. So that's what the meeting program really does a good job of encapsulating, is helping you understand yourself, so that way you can make a much more informed decision around how you want to pursue your internship and ultimately your full-time role coming out. So I'm a big fan of it.
Yeah. Eleanor, how did the school support and prepare you for your ultimate career in consulting?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Emory is based in Atlanta, right? So every consulting firm has an office in Atlanta. And so they did a really good job bringing a lot of those, major consulting firms to campus. So having, scheduled coffee chats where they'd come in and sit in a coffee shop and ask you, just get to know you and ask you questions. And then have like formal presentations and happy hours. And so I think that, having that scale and a number of consulting firms opened up a lot of opportunities to me and really understand what type of consulting I wanted to get into, the type of consulting, the type of people I wanted to work with, different things like that. And then also, they have a really good CMC, which is a career management center, where they will meet with you once a week or multiple times a week and do, case studies with you and also interview preps. And then you have your classmates as well, right? So, I want to say like over 50% of the people that go to Emory go into consulting. I think that's changing, but that was what it was when I was there. And so there's already a big group of people. They're in the similar, phase of life that you are in. And so, casing and interviewing, you have like a really good support system there as well.
Now, for people who don't know what casing is, it is an integral part of recruiting for a consulting firm, where they essentially give you a set of facts, a situation, and then see how you think, right? Do you remember what a set of facts or case they gave you at EY Parthenon?
Oh gosh, I did so many different case interviews. I want to say it was like a market sizing case. I actually did a case interview not too long ago. So I remember that one where I was interviewing someone. But yeah, market sizing or trying to figure out like a different segment of the market. So maybe they're in like brick and mortar, and then we're looking to see if they want to get into e-commerce or something like that. So those are just a couple examples of cases.
Yeah, it can be tricky if you're not prepared for it, which is why it's useful to join the consulting club and to be with others who've gone through the process to give you some advice and some counsel and the practice. I mean, practice is what makes you really good. Catherine, can you speak to the Career Management Center at Tepper?
It was absolutely amazing. Kate was my folk that helped me, and I can't begin to thank her and the team enough, because something that I personally really struggled with coming in is similar to what I was talking about earlier, and the fact that I really thought I knew what I wanted to do, and then I got to business school and everyone else was telling me what I should be doing based off my background and my skills and what I was good at, right? Oh, you've got to go to tech, like you got to go to Amazon, you got to go work in tech, you got to go to banking. And I was really honestly kind of like lost and confused by it. And Kate and the team at the Career Center were so helpful. And, to be honest, that's kind of my biggest takeaway from business school, was that they empowered me to really just focus on finding ways to really learn more about myself and what was important to me. And then I realized I went to the field in the industry all along that I thought I was going to potentially go into, which was great for me because it worked out. And I'm so happy and so grateful for everything that Lowe's has done for me. But it, the biggest thing was just following my gut and my intuition. That's what they really empowered me to do. They helped prepare me with connecting me with alumni, because retail is a pretty big recruiter for business school, but it's not massive, not anything like consulting, banking, or tech, for example. So they really went above and beyond in helping connect me with people and prepare me for what kind of like a retail role in life could be like. And they really helped honestly make me feel like it was a really, really informed decision. So very grateful to everything that they did for me.
Yeah, and this is one of the big kind of secrets of business school, really, the amount of resources that are poured into the career management centers, the networks that they have and how they help you connect with them, the companies that come and naturally recruit MBAs. It's so different from what it is in undergrad. I'm sure that if I were to ask each of you how helpful were the career management centers in your undergraduate institutions, you might very well say, I never even stepped foot in there. I never met anyone there. So this is a totally different experience for MBAs in particular, and anyone who goes for a graduate degree in business, even a MIM or whatever, master's in supply chain management or data analytics or what have you. The school's job is not done until you get a job, which is unlike any other department or school at the university. It's not done when you're handed the piece of parchment. It's done when you have a job that you really want. And that's a very big difference in an MBA education. Okay, looking back at your experience, I wonder if you might isolate 3 things about your MBA time that most resonated with you. It could be anything from an immersion trip abroad to a co-curricular leadership opportunity. It could be an individual class. It could be your classmates overall and what they contributed to your learning, whatever it is. What are the 3 things? Moose, what do you say?
I think you're reading my mind. The first one that comes to mind is we had a Glow-based trip. So Glow-based is a program that we have at Kelley where we effectively go abroad and we help support typically a small, medium business. So we had the opportunity to go to Ghana. That was amazing, life-changing. And, speaking to what I was saying earlier about humility, right? I think we came into Ghana armed with all this information around like, well, look, we've been in business school now for 12 months. So we're basically Steve Jobs, or we're basically, Satya, right? And it's like, maybe not, right? It kind of helps arrest, your natural inclination to say, this is how you should do something, and offer up a new opportunity to learn a lot more. So it was great. The food was amazing. I've been to Ghana since. I've been to Africa like 3 times since. So that was awesome. The second thing that comes to mind, there was basically all of my classes having to do with accounting and Excel. So before I entered business school, I mainly used Excel for making grocery lists. But by the time I left, I was creating like large, complicated finance models that I leveraged, corporate strat, and then in my investment career at 3M, and I leverage it now as well at Microsoft. So I encourage everyone. There was a class, K507, which is kind of the beginning class, like the intro to learning how to leverage, I'd say, Excel and that sort of stuff, but also spreadsheet. Their classes around how to create financial statements and spreadsheet modeling and that type of stuff was really good. The last thing that I would say was was great is our social chairs. So I have to give it up once again to the social committee, because I don't think business school is anywhere near the education isn't anywhere near as valuable as the culture, and the culture is exclusively the people. So I think Kelley does a really good job of staying engaged. And I'll challenge you, John. You said earlier their job is done when you get the job. I think Kelley's job is done whenever you want a job, right? So I know
Right.
tons of people who, especially during the pandemic, which was, a tough time for a lot. And I graduated in 19, so a lot of people started off with their dream job and then were faced with, the unfortunate reality that they, laid off or something to that effect due to the market. And I mean, I have to give it to Kelley. They stepped up, not shy about, reaching out to their networks and really helping individuals get jobs. So, I mean, that always warms my spirit to see that. So, yeah.
That's great. Eleanor, your three things.
Yeah. So the first thing that pops to my mind is, so when we were in the kind of like the first year, that summer program, there was this, like, they called it like a leadership development course. And basically they took us all to Fort Benning, which is this military base in south of Atlanta. And they made us do an obstacle course that they make the military personnel do as part of their training. So, most of us don't have, the NFL background or, or aren't super in shape, but we're having to do this really intense obstacle course. And so it just made us use a different part of our mind and body that we weren't used to. And just really, kind of stretch our critical thinking skills on how to get through this pretty intense course. And we were able to network with, Army personnel, eat in the cafeteria with them, and just really, it was a really good team bonding experience, something that I'll probably never be able to do again. But I really enjoyed. Another really good experience was, they have this event. It's a huge networking event where they buy out part of the aquarium. And so all of the major, it's consulting. They also have like other, businesses that go. And so you're interviewing with people with like sharks over your head and talking to people. And so it was just like a really good opportunity to network with some of the biggest companies in Atlanta. In a really cool environment. So I really enjoyed that. And that opened up my eyes to a lot of new companies. And then the third event I would say would be, they had this like leadership course where we had the opportunity to train and mentor, it was this business analytics master's program, where most of the people were straight out of undergrad. So they had never had a job, post undergrad. And so we were able to really help them with like, networking, interviewing, and then just getting through like, hard classes. And so I thought that was a really good opportunity to sharpen my leadership skills.
Yeah, that's great. Catherine, what three things that still live with you today from your MBA experience?
Yeah, so the first two I honestly feel every day because they still influence me. First and foremost, I went to the Forte conference, which is for kind of women in business. This is something that I got to do before classes even started. So I got to meet 20, 30 other women from not only just Tepper, but other business schools. And we already got thrown into the fire of starting to meet companies, interview. We got to meet a lot of kind of the administrative team. Forte members. It was an amazing kind of launch back into here, go back to school, go back to like getting your mind back around recruiting. And not only that, it was just a really fun event. It was a great time. We went to Austin actually, where Musa's at, and we really enjoyed it. And it was just a great way to meet people. And then, second with that is just the overall friendships and relationships that I've built at Tepper, especially with women. So coming from engineering, I worked in manufacturing construction, and there were no females around, let alone female leaders. So something that I really loved about Tepper and just B school in general is just empowering women in business and minorities and everything else, and just focusing on that being such an important thing that, that was really great for me to see. And I loved it. And I've formed all of these fantastic relationships with amazing female leaders that are in different industries, different parts of the world. So just having that network has been amazing. But one of my favorite courses was econ. Like I said, I didn't have a lot of these classes in undergrad, and my Professor Ailes, was probably one of the best professors I've ever had. He really pushed people to think differently and kind of call them out on talking through their thoughts, sharing their perspectives, because econ can have a little bit of a political side to it, you could say. And, you know, it was just really fascinating to see someone who was able to just bridge so many different people together and learn. And that was one of the best classes I've ever had. So I tried to take as many classes as I could with him. And, you have amazing faculty and leadership when you just want to take a class with a professor just for the learning, regardless of what the topic is. So overall, those are some of my biggest things that I remember.
That's great. I wonder if you can mention something that you wish you had known before entering the MBA program that might have helped you in it. Catherine, what do you think?
Honestly, it's funny because I got this advice and ignored it, right? But I wish I would have. So I worked really, really hard up until the program. Like, I think a week before I even moved to Pittsburgh, I was living in Kansas City. And I was working really hard because I wanted to save a lot of money to be in the program and everything else. But, everyone said was, this is one of the few points in your life where you're not working, right? Go out and enjoy yourself, travel, see family, that kind of thing. I was just like, go, 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 get to finish work, go to school, move in only a week. And I wish I would have taken more time off, because wrapping your head around stopping working full time and going back to school full time is a big change, honestly. Yeah. And I used to be out in the field and I went back to sitting behind a desk. So for me personally, that was a challenge. I figured it out eventually, but I got that feedback from everyone and I was like, oh, whatever. So I wish I would have listened to it. Those are my peers who did that. You could really tell that their mind was ready. They were ready to go. They had that time to, take that breather and get their minds reset. And you could tell that it was really good for them.
Right. Eleanor, do you have something that you wish you had known before you entered the MBA program at Goizueta?
Yeah, I think for me, I guess I wish I would have just known that there's so many different backgrounds, right, that go into the program. I think for me to start, I kind of came into the program with pretty low confidence. I was looking at some of the resumes. It's like, these are investment bankers or ex-consultants. And here I am with, a couple years of experience. But then once I actually got in the program, there were ex-pro soccer players or teachers. There's all these different backgrounds and everyone brings a different, something different to the table. And so I think just going into the program with an open mind and knowing that, they chose me for a reason, right? There's something that I bring to the table and there's something that each and every person brings to the table. So I wish I would have just realized that before going to the program. I think it would have helped out a lot in the beginning.
Yeah. Moose, how about you?
Yeah, I hate to beat a dead horse, but yeah, I mean, the analogy is just like burning the boat, right? I think if there's one thing looking back, I wish I had done that core during that core time period. I was not doing well, right? I ended up graduating with honors and all this type of stuff, but in the beginning, it did not look good. And I was constantly looking for the exit. And I have to actually give a special shout out to Gail Nichols from IU and some other members of the staff. I remember I was talking to Miss Gail, and in my mind, I was thinking, man, I could be coaching right now. I could be doing X, Y, Z. And she was like, no, you don't. You don't want to do that. Otherwise, you would have done it. Buckle up. I think, yeah. So burn it. So to that point, say burn in the boat, right? Recognizing once you enter your MBA, be present. Be present, and you'll get what you get back is going to multiply in ways you can't even imagine. The ROI, to use an MBA term, you can't even imagine the impact that investing and being present in your program will have on you. So burning the boats and knowing that the school wants you to win too, right? So recognize that and have fun.
So let's go back to when you were actually in application mode and you were applying, and what that was like, and what advice would you give current applicants to your school? Moose, let's stay with you on that.
Yeah, so I leveraged the consortium program. So I don't know how many people on the call are familiar with the consortium program, but that kind of served as my guideway. So I knew for myself personally, I wanted to go to a top 20 MBA program. And I wanted to go to a program where the environment was such that, like I said earlier, it sounds funny me saying it now, but they want me to win. So I think through some of the synergies between IU and the NFL, also meeting a number of the members of the faculty, understanding where they placed individuals. At the time, Kelley had the #1 career services department, according to some of the rankings and things of this effect. I said, well, it makes sense to me to go somewhere like this. So I applied through the consortium, which is more or less a common app across a number of top 20 programs. I did that. It's similar to the Forte program that Catherine mentioned, but for minorities. And yeah, I was super fortunate to be able to receive a fellowship and get accepted into Kelley. So I'd say that as far as the application process is concerned, keep in mind, once again, first and foremost, that the culture is the most important thing, right? And if you're not enjoying your experience, you won't get much out of it. Number two, make sure to afford yourself that sort of optionality that we were talking about a little bit earlier, right? So that way you don't go to a program that almost exclusively, sends people to said industry or vertical, right? So if that's important to you.
Yep.
And the last one is the student body population. So a number of other people at IU were career switchers. I'm not sure what the numbers were, but it made it easier for me to network and engage and have, that sort of camaraderie. So that's
right. Catherine, your advice.
Very similar to Musa, so I agreed with everything that he was saying. For me personally, like getting back into the school mindset of taking a standardized test, the GMAT again, I took a couple tests and I was like, I need a lot more help. So I actually did a large paid online platform. I think it was The Economist, I believe, which really helped me prepare for the GMAT. But when I was looking at schools, I visited all the ones that I applied to. I kept my school count low because I had only had 2 years of work experience. So I knew if I wasn't going to get in, then I would wait another year and get more experience. But I wanted to really focus on culture. I know it's an overused term, but it's so true. You get that culture and experience from visiting the school, going to their weekend visits, that kind of a thing. That sealed the deal for me with Tepper. Just amazing people that I met along the way. But I really looked for small analytical programs. I wanted to know pretty much all my classmates. I didn't want to be a number. So those were the things that are important to me. So I really focused on that again, and not necessarily listen to everything everyone else was telling you should or shouldn't do, and really just stuck to my gut. And it worked out perfectly because Tepper was, a great school for me. And, rankings are really important, especially depending on what you want to do in your career. So just depending on what your interests are, I also wanted to go to a high ranking school. So, I did a lot of research. I think I was a member of, I don't know how many websites, like GMAT Club, like a bunch of other stuff. So I really just immersed myself in learning as much as I could to have like a well-informed decision, which it absolutely was at the end of the day.
Right. Finally, Eleanor, your advice to an applicant today.
I feel like I'm just going to echo what they just said, but I think that one, I'll just, add a couple things. So I think when looking, for a specific school, right, there's so many different options out there, right? I mean, there's a bunch of different schools you can go to, a lot of schools that are highly ranked. And so I think just like narrowing down your list, to Catherine's point, is really important. And then also, once you have like a pretty solid list of a couple different schools, just start like reaching out to people. I mean, it can be people on LinkedIn, or, if a friend of a friend that went to this school, like just like reaching out to them, like learning about their experience, and then also just like asking them to refer you to someone else, and just broadening, making your network just like bigger. Just so you can really understand the culture, which I know we've mentioned numerous times, the types of, jobs people get out of the school, and just to help you make a really good informed decision.
Yeah, all good advice for everyone. Well, listen, our time is up, but thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for your perspectives and insights. I think it's very helpful to people who are now in that mode where you were years ago, thinking about where to go, what to do, is it worth it? My God, it's going to cost me so much money, and it's going to be a certain amount of time out of my life. But I think all three of you would agree, there's no remorse about having done what you did. So Moose, Eleanor, and Catherine, thanks very much for representing your schools: Carnegie Mellon Tepper School of Business, Emory University's Goizueta School of Business, and of course, Indiana University's Kelley School of Business. Yes, yes, yes. And for all of you out there, good luck on your MBA journey. This is John Byrne with Poets and Quants.